This series of videos introduces the 38 chapters of the Routledge Handbook of Environmental Movements. It's a project of the Social Change Lab, and we gratefully acknowledge the support of the Mary Lee Bequest for the work of our team. Hi, everyone. I'm Winifred Lewis, a professor in psychology at the University of Queensland.
Hey guys, I'm Austin Manchadi and I'm a research assistant on this project.
Hello, I'm Andrea. I'm a research assistant in the project too.
So as well as our introductory videos to the chapters, we also wanted to spend some time giving advice to students and staff that might think of duplicating this project. I'll start and I'll say overall, I found it unbelievably rewarding. Part of my motivation to do the project was very shallow. I wanted to create a situation where I would be forced to read the entire handbook. And I was forced to read the entire handbook, and that was a great intellectual benefit to me. I also, unanticipated benefit I received was that the networking with the other authors, of course, is valuable in my professional situation. So through the project, I established contact with all the authors, and in many cases, I generated obvious goodwill. Many authors responded by following me on Twitter and so on, and indicating a willingness to collaborate in future. One project that was interesting to me that I had mentioned to the author sent me a copy of their book and so on. So there's really a lot of benefit from an academic intellectual perspective in creating the chapter. The major costs, I would say, are the time, which is really unsustainable for many academics. So I'm in a position of biographical availability, as we learned in the handbook, in the sense that I am a tenured professor. So I was able to make time for this project, but I literally would have cost me 100 hours. And that's something most academics simply wouldn't be able to do. I also have privilege in my academic position because in the past I've attracted philanthropy to support the work of my lab. And that's the Mary Lee Bequest that's referred to. So the RAs here, Austin and Andrea, didn't have to participate on a voluntary basis. They wouldn't have been able to do that. I'm sure you can speak to that, you guys, but they each put in probably the same, around eight hours a week for about 6 to 10 weeks. I'm not sure. So that's a significant investment that I think most people couldn't do. But the comment I would make about the kind of structure and logistics is that part of the reason it was so challenging to manage as a team was that I decided to do the project on short notice and committed to the editors I would get it done by a particular period of time around our academic year, so that there wasn't any lead time. So we were doing it in a tearing hurry. That's partly why I had to use the RAs and paid RAs for that. If we had planned further ahead, I might have been able to draw more volunteer RAs to the project. And the last position of privilege that I had was that I was teaching a truly enormous course. So I put out a call for volunteers to read 38 chapters, and I was able to get enough people to cover those chapters. Another comment I would make about the volunteers, I'm just going to speak as if our viewers have actually seen at least some of the recordings. But not all of our students turned up having read the chapter, and the ones that had read it didn't all understand. So this was an issue in the quality of the recordings. The other issue was my own equipment being substandard at the beginning. Just my microphone was scratchy and had poor sound quality. And afterwards, we're using this headset, it's not the most flash setup that people have. So if I was giving advice to an academic starting a project like this, I would say, it is rich and worth doing, but be mindful of the length of the project, the time that it takes, and the resources that you'll need. The other kind of feedback that I would give is that with the students, their performance would have lifted had they been given more time. And their participation was unassessed and voluntary. And I think there's strengths to that. And indeed, that was kind of a feature of the project. I wanted it to have those features. But if you were doing it as a project with your class, that actually had assessment weighting, I think students would have been more likely to put in a deeper intellectual engagement in some cases. Having said that, this project being voluntary attracted some of the best students in my class and kind of made sure that we didn't do recordings with the people that didn't want to be there. So that's a real virtue. I want to hand over to you, Austin. You had some comments maybe about the recording, and then Andrea can talk about the editing process. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. The big thing with the recording, as Professor Lewis said, is there's quite a bit of short turnaround, particularly if you're strained for time, right? You have to worry about getting the chapter read, getting the video recorded. You generally have one shot to get it recorded because you can't sit around for 3-4 hours. Oh, we messed up this thing, do it again. And I guess the big thing would be if you're a perfectionist, I mean, all power to you, but I wouldn't go into a project like this expecting that you're going to be creating like gold class, A standard, beautiful videos with great transitions and great chemistry. That they'll be mumbling and stuff. It's you have to have a little bit of leeway for yourself and for the students, because things never work out perfectly.
Yeah, that's such an important point. And maybe I'll just describe our recording process as well. So I put out a call for students to volunteer at the start of the project. This was about 3 weeks before the recordings began. And at the time, I also had only just recruited the RAs. So I assigned each chapter to at least one RA, because I wanted to have someone that would definitely come to the session. And then I had to set aside 38 hours, and we did 1 hour per chapter, with the recording intended to take 10 to 30 minutes. And after I assigned each of the chapters to at least one student on the basis of the student's interest and availability in terms of time, and the overlap between our collective availability, my own and the students and the RAs. And then when the student came, if they came, then we had a conversation as a team about what we would say. Then we did the recording for 10 to 30 minutes, and I had to finish by at least 10 to 15 minutes before, because the recording had to render before the next session started at the hour. So that was the recording process. And so that was the context where if it became obvious in the first 5 minutes that the student hadn't read the chapter, we had to try and find some things for them to say and kind of have a group discussion about that. You had some other comments about the recording, I think, Austin, or does that cover it?
I think that was it. The other thing as well with giving the leeway is you also have to bear in mind people might not always interpret the chapters correctly. That's the thing. And you can have authors potentially saying, "Oh, can you add this extra clip in on the end of it?" It's not, like I said, it's not a perfect world, but yeah, do the best that you can.
Yeah. And then for the editing, what we did was once I had rendered the Zoom recording, I uploaded it to a Google Drive file where the RAs were able to download it and work with it on their devices. And we quickly ran into trouble with the size of everyone's Google Drive accounts. So that's one issue. Then the RAs found on their devices, in some cases, there were other concerns. Do you want to take us through some of the editing concerns, Andrea?
Yeah, sure. So I pretty enjoy the filming and the editing process. And I found most of the time that I'm doing the editing, the editing software is very hard to run on your personal device. You really need a device that is professional and also has a lot of storage room. So you could do the editing in one row instead of keep visiting it, because of the computer has run out of capacity to do the editing. And
just to jump in, I think our team, originally I asked the students to use Adobe Premiere Pro, which they're entitled to access as staff members, and it just wouldn't properly run on some of your devices, right? I think you ended up using different software that was maybe less capable, but also less hungry. So Austin, what software did you use?
So I have a Mac. I'm an Apple person, so I used the iMovie, which is just the free editing software, but it's really user friendly and you can learn it within 20 minutes. It's not that hard to learn. The only problem is you're taking a 50 megabyte video, it exports a 2 gigabyte video, so it's a huge difference in quantity.
And what did you use, Jan or Andrea? You used the UQ computers, right? What software did you use?
So there's a quick trick of doing the editing. So for the more advanced editing, I just use Premiere Pro because it has more tricks you can play with. But for easy rendering the video, and also you just want to do some like cutting and putting a few chunks of video together, you can just like use for example, my computer is from Windows. You could just use the Windows editor that you is included in your computer software, and
which I think is called Windows Movie Maker or something like
yes,
that, right? Mm-hmm.
Windows Movie Maker, and those apps has the basic tricks you need, and it also takes less time for you to import and export the video compared to
yeah. And also in the editing front, we had issues where when we did the recording, sometimes would take notes if there was something that was needed for editing, like it might be false start, cut the false start, or it might be like, you know, a student had an emotional reaction. Can you please cut that from the video? But I didn't carefully record when we started and when we stopped and what the times were. And so the RAs had to watch, in some cases, long videos to try and find what needed to be done and what needed to be cut. And then with a few of the chapters, we were able to interview the authors, and we generally broke those videos up into 2 parts to make it a bit easier experience for viewers. But I didn't carefully record those moments either. And sometimes we would end part 1, have a bit of a chat, and then start part 2. And it was hard for the RAs having to like painfully watch. So the editing actually took ages. Even though by design, we didn't edit out most of the minor stumbles and mistakes that people talk about. And then our final process was, once we had an edited set of files, we also added the intro and outro that you would have seen if you watched the videos, which Austin and Andrea had prepared ahead of time. And we just made them pretty short, but even then, you know, that probably took a couple of hours, hey guys, to make those intros and outros.
Yeah, to get everything to line up and work, yeah.
Yeah, so that takes time. And then we did that just so that there would be kind of a degree of certainty that we would have introduced the Routledge handbook in every case, as well as acknowledged the funding. And then I sent the links to the chapter authors, and many of them at this point in time haven't responded, partly because of you know, the time pressure, but I'm sure that would be another feature of the project. So our process is that we're going to go ahead and publish if the guys don't get back to us. But if you had a commitment to contact every author and get that feedback, you'd have to wait for that feedback. And as I'm speaking now to an imaginary staff member, you know how long that takes, right? So to get feedback from 38 authors, no, if you were really going to make sure that every single one responds. So we just decided we'll publish if they don't respond, and after giving them a decent interval. And the other thing that we did was we said to the authors, if they want to, they can record another clip that we'll add into the end of the process. And if they want to, of course, we would replace our recording with something that they prepared. And a couple of the authors groups had prepared something anyways, and then a few others had agreed to be interviewed. But the majority of the chapters were recorded by our team. And so I think only a handful have said they might submit those clips. And at this date of recording, none have done so. So I hope this video gives you a sense of how long everything takes and how arduous, although fun it is. It's kind of funny because I had said to the team here that I'd like to have a short video of only around 5 minutes. And I can see how long this has already taken. It's very symbolic of the process. Takes longer than you think. Anything else that we need to say before we close, Austin?
I think we've covered it.
Okay, and Andrea, is there anything else?
That's all good.
Okay, good. I'll say again to the hypothetical viewer, it was a rich project with many benefits. So if you go for it, I think you'll probably not regret it. But go in with your eyes open. Bye now.
For those of you watching, be sure to subscribe and follow us at Social Change UQ. and check out our website for more videos.